Well, hi, Albert.
Hey, buddy. How you doing, Nate?
It's been a minute.
Yeah. Well, we've been, I don't know, busy. I've been working, doing actual work.
Getting paid to talk.
Getting paid
to plan. Getting paid to de-risk. Oh yeah, we brought on a new client, which was exciting. You've been busy.
Yeah, I've been busy. What's really funny is I live in Alberta, specifically Calgary, and we brought on a new client whose headquarters are in Calgary. So naturally, the first thing they asked of me was to fly to Toronto to attend a workshop right across the street from our headquarters. I found that to be pretty amusing.
We had the pleasure of you being in the office, so everything worked out in the end. Right?
That's right. I like to swan around and pretend like I'm important every time I'm in Toronto.
Swan around. I've never heard swan around. That must be yours. Is that like a Texas thing?
No, it's definitely not a Texas thing. I picked that up from the Brits that I have worked with over the years, so I presume it's a British thing, but I guess I don't really know.
Sounds like a conspiracy, but you know what? Speaking of conspiracies, I've got something to check in with you about.
Oh God, is this?
And you're gonna get annoyed. Okay, it's the Nate, not Dave. Okay. Yeah. You remember, this is like going back more than a year. You're like, I don't believe it. It's not true. No, it's true. And I continue to prove it.
How's your group going?
Unfortunately, it's just me. I'm the only member on LinkedIn, and nobody's
weird.
joined it.
Anyway, do please continue with your update, though.
Yeah, Nate. So remember, all you Nates out there that are getting called Dave, go to Nate.Dave on LinkedIn and join my group. One of the influences, so this guy, Nate B. Jones, he's an AI influencer. He's on Substack. He's one of my subscribers. I subscribe to his channel. He's got 102 followers. I don't know how many subscribers, but it's really great content. I mean, he goes really deep on all things AI. He's also a Seahawks fan, so, congratulations.
Oh, yeah,
Nate.
all right, go Hawks.
Yeah, I was, grew up across the Puget from Seattle, so I was a suffering Seahawks fan myself for many, many years when I was younger. But yeah,
right.
Anyways,
then Pete Carroll showed up and made everything better.
So I reached out to him and I just asked him. I was like, "Hey, when you introduce yourself, do people mishear you and then go Dave?" And he actually responded to me and he was like, "Yeah, all the time." There's another Nate.Dave. And then randomly, I get some, account executive, sales guy that reaches out to me on LinkedIn. His name is Nate. His name is Nathan, actually. And so I said, "Hey, I'm not interested in what you're selling, but I got a question for you that's random." And he goes, "Okay, fine." So then I asked him, I'm like, do you go by Nate? And he's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Okay, I have this theory. Like, do you ever get Dave when you're introducing?" And he said yes as well, all the time.
I don't know, man.
It just
I feel
happens,
like
man.
All these conversations that you're having with other Nates, they're all happening without me or anyone else to validate that they're actually happening.
A new angle to the conspiracy has been introduced.
Exactly. Like this is one of those two-sided coins conspiracy situations. On the one side, there's the actual Nate Dave thing, and on the other side, there's you pathologically lying about it. So at least that's what I presume.
But you have to know, you have to realize that Nates we are an innocent kind. We are truly, no, I'm just kidding.
God, I'm just sitting here racking my brain for a bad Nate.
Yes. Like there are none. Not in the Epstein files, nowhere to be found.
Oh God, you really want to go there? You want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein?
No, but actually, I do want to pivot.
Podcast?
Can we pivot real quick? So I want to mention the listener survey. We do have some responses, which is really exciting. We're going to start promoting a little bit more. Just as an FYI to remind everybody, visit our when you're going to our podcast and you see. Go to the show notes. There's a link to our listener survey. We really like to get to know you better. So, we're going to try and take your questions and we'll work some of your feedback into future episodes and whatnot. But the survey is going to help us do that for the rest of the year. So I'm pretty excited. Like,
for sure.
Hopefully we haven't reached actual listeners. But
yeah,
my neighbor Dave has submitted a survey. He told me.
Well, a bunch of people who work for us submitted like test surveys to make sure that it was working. So I think that those are still in the data set as well. So we had to do a little bit of culling before we really Yeah, but which means that we haven't really reached a critical mass. We have a bunch of responses, but we need to go through them and make sure that they're all valid. So the more we get, the easier that will be. So, do please get in there and answer the questions. Give us questions.
We're kind of a big deal, right?
Well, yeah, totally a huge deal. Yeah, I mean we're low key the biggest celebrities that you've never heard of.
Yeah, so. No kidding. Well, so the news of the day, like in terms of building, which was pretty interesting. So Lunar New Year's, right? Chinese New Year, it's like the thing. So a lot of Chinese people of Chinese ancestry or immigrants live in my neighborhood, and so we Gung Hei Fat Choi or Lunar New Year's if you're from somewhere other than China and Asia. And it got me thinking, like the Belt and Road Initiative, like what is that doing? In fact, like 2025 was a banner year for the Belt and Road Initiative. They spent, I would say, a modest $213 billion on 350 deals.
Okay, yeah, I guess they could have gone. They could have gone real hard and pushed it up to 300. If they were really trying.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about China is, like, we have talked about tariffs. We talked about Trump. We talked about their effect on projects in the past. And so I think what Trump is doing with tariffs and whatnot, it's actually like, it's not isolating China, which is what the U.S. wanted to do. It's actually creating, it's helping China reintegrate. Like even Canada is turning towards China.
Well, China's trying to build
welcome our new Chinese overlords.
Yeah. Yeah. That does seem to be what's happening. And it's particularly true if you're in the Eastern Hemisphere, but like China is building what in the mid 20th century would have been called like a co-prosperity sphere,
Exactly.
Like these giant trade networks and calling them trade networks implies a bilateral nature to the trade that doesn't really exist in this case. Like it's very one-sided. China is the economic powerhouse of the region, and they know it. And they've parlayed a lot of the American manufacturing that has happened there over the past few decades into some truly just second to none tech capabilities. Like the way that they can churn out high tech solutions to everyday problems is it's the same way that people used to talk about Japan in the 80s, where like they've got this future tech stuff they're all just walking around with all the time, and they're building all these things because we're paying them to, and like that's exactly what's happening in China, and the level of like technological growth there is just absurd. I mean, the dark factories and the proliferation of electric vehicles, and they're building more,
even dancing robots. Did you see the dancing robots?
I've seen dancing robots.
Humanoids.
Sorry, dancing robots was cool. Okay,
right.
Like
I think Wall Street Journal talked about that, like yesterday, and it was basically like there is not a market for dancing humanoids. And I'm like,
why do you feel the need to say
whom?
This?
According to whom?
But also, like Beck had dancing Asimo robots in the video for Hell Yes like 20 years ago. So. Let's not forget about the Hell Yes
20 years
video.
ago. You mentioned Japan. Do you remember when you got your first Walkman?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
Man, that was
listening to Pantera while mowing the lawn. Absolutely.
I was listening to Faith No More.
Okay. Yeah.
Epic.
Were you mowing the lawn though?
No. I was probably riding a bike without a helmet though.
Yeah, classic Walkman behavior.
Riding a bike, no helmet, Walkman blasting, and no reflectors. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I mean, my unsafe Walkman behavior. Mowing the lawn probably pretty safe, all things considered. But I definitely did light a bunch of GI Joes on fire while I was, listening to stuff on my Walkman. So. I mean, that was probably not the best choice, but
it was cool.
It was fun.
And speaking of China though, the energy mismatch, well, the advantage, I guess. Actually, here, let me back up. There's a few things that I'm really excited about. Like there are a bunch of LLMs, a bunch of models like Kimi, Queen, that are coming out of China that are really exciting, right? And agents like OpenClaw that's from the US, but you can use the Chinese models that have huge context windows. So that's pretty exciting. But then their power advantage, like they have more energy production, more than 50% of the US right now. And I think the US is playing catch up. Like, you know, all the SMR stuff, like Canada is building, right? The US is building like crazy. The tech companies are building like crazy. Yeah, well, that's true.
I'm doubling. Look, and by the way, just quick preview. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're going to be touching base with some of the predictions and kind of quantifiable statements we made last season later on in this episode. But this is one where I feel like we haven't really seen enough information to really know what's actually going on yet. Because like you can place an order all you want to, like, you know, you send an email to a guy and say, I want one of your SMRs. It's a little bit more controlled than that, but still,
it's a bit of a black box.
It is like nothing's come out of that box yet. So we'll see when they start generating power. You know, call me. And,
it's like when Mark Zuckerberg said there was that meeting where Trump asked him how much he was going to invest, and he's like, I don't know, 500 billion.
Yeah, sure.
Do you remember this? Like just random,
just throwing numbers around. You know, just what's going to be a number that's big enough to appease dear leader, but not so big that I can't actually do it if the rubber meets the road. But it never will, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, back to China. You know, you're talking about SMRs, but I think the real news there is just a nuclear growth in general. They have more nuclear capacity under construction right now than the entire rest of the world combined, and it's not even close. Not even close.
It's insane. We're going to start kind of going back to one of the first episodes that we recorded, which was at the, what do we call it? The Disneyland for adults.
Yeah,
I think
Mining
you called
Disneyland.
Mine Expo. It was so cool. It was so cool. And the scale of technology, the like advancements, the autonomous, the electrification, which electrification is what we're going to talk about. But let me read the prediction to you, Albert, and then I think we can sort of dive into it. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Electrification is clearly an opportunity for mine sites to conserve on diesel fuel and clean up their mine sites.
Well, let's talk about mine sites cleaning up their mine sites. So it looks like this is happening, right? Like we're getting rapid acceleration in the electrification of mine sites. So the market for electrification equipment is expected to triple in the next few years. So that's pretty cool. Battery electric. So I have one of our new clients actually is in the strip mining business, and they have a bunch of autonomous haul trucks, which we'll get to later, but none of them are electric. Right. So I'm curious to know if that's diesel on there.
They are diesel.
Yeah. Okay. They are. Okay. But a lot of the new automated ones are either hybrid or full electric, and there's, you know, a lot of investment being announced there. Like there's some mines in Quebec recently announced $40 million worth of investment in battery electric haul trucks. So each battery electric vehicle apparently reduces CO2 emissions by 600 tons per year, and it also increases productivity. Presumably that's because a lot of the electrics that we saw at Mine Expo had a continuous feed as opposed to a battery. So, I mean, they have, in addition to a battery, right? Like they've got a rail or something that they're traveling along.
And it's instant torque, right? Like you don't lose anything with an electric motor.
Like if you've ever met a haul truck, they don't really have a torque problem, but yes, like they're.
But they could always use a little bit more, is what I'm saying.
Oh, sure. Like who couldn't, right? Like when we start drag racing these things, that's going to get really exciting. But the main thing I think about this is the efficiency increase, because if you do have them on a rail, right, and they can, you know, maybe slowly travel between rails and into storage and things like that, like they don't have to spend as much time, you know, in downtime. It's pretty much just maintenance, and maintenance for electric vehicles is way, way simpler than it is for internal combustion engine driven vehicles. So, like as the fleets get electrified, they're also going to become more operationally efficient, which is cool. So that's all happening.
If you're regarding our strip mining client, so if you're kind of working on the schedule, like put it into sort of the project management, you know, risk management, like what kind of risks would we be avoiding, you know, diesel versus electric? Like, how would you think about that?
The risk of a haul truck just giving up, you know, and not working well is a lot lower in this case. I would assume. Oh yeah. I mean, because the number, oftentimes you'll hear about machinery in terms of how many moving parts it has. Oh, it has one moving part, or a million moving parts. Like electrics are way more on the one side of the spectrum than they are, whereas like the diesel stuff is way on the other side of the spectrum, right? Like they've got zillions of moving parts, they're really, really complex machines. So any single part of they're really mature, right? Like there's a lot of maturity around how they are maintained and they're pretty reliable and that's all wonderful. But you still can't overcome the fact that there's just a lot that can go wrong in an internal combustion driven vehicle, and a lot less in electric ones. So I think that those risks go down. For like project work, it doesn't make a huge difference because
but it's the maintenance.
It's for operations and maintenance.
Yeah. No, that
it just
makes sense.
means you can maintain a smaller fleet that's more productive and all that stuff. But let's pivot. Another thing we talked about at Mine Expo was cogeneration.
This is interesting. There was some new, like there's new stuff that's coming online up on the the Iron Shield, like around Sudbury, a lot of mines in northern Ontario.
Ferris is going to kill us. I don't remember what that's called, but that area.
Yeah. Up north.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
It's up where people, I guess, live. I don't know. I'm going to cut
Ferris
that out.
is like close to the Arctic Circle, I think, right? Isn't that? No.
Yeah. He lives in an igloo.
In Toronto, anything north of Bloor is like another world. So
northern Ontario, northern Ontario, much of which is south of central Alberta. But anyway,
true story. Anyways, cogeneration, really interesting, but we're starting to see more.
We are, yeah. It looks like not only are we seeing a lot of cogeneration, but one of the things that I said during the Mine Expo episode was that our mining clients are going to start becoming power generation and distribution clients, and that's absolutely happening. A lot of this news is coming out of Zimbabwe. We got mine companies entering the infrastructure market in a mass there, like building, hundreds of megawatts of solar and geothermal specifically to power their mines, but they're able to, contribute to grid power and stability and all that good stuff. So
maybe related to Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
A very good chance. Same question as before. When you're sort of planning, scheduling, risk management, like what's cogeneration? Like what's the upside and risk avoidance with cogeneration versus like the other? Like how would schedulers, now that they have the big one is grid how would they think about it?
It's grid stability. So there, especially in places where the grid cannot be relied upon. I would say that, we use Zimbabwe as an example because they surface in this news a lot. So that's definitely a place where you can expect a little bit of grid instability. Like I used to work in Nigeria, same thing. Like every building there has what in our very broad definition would be cogeneration. They've got generators exhausting directly onto the sidewalks, by the way, super fun. But there's generators like in every single commercial building there that serve to supplement grid power and occasionally replace it when the grid power inevitably fails.
Sure.
So, and I would love to say that it's localized to places, in faraway lands, but it's not, right? The grids are vulnerable everywhere. Whenever you build hardened, robust facilities, you need to think about grid reliability and, the ability to, like how much uptime do you need? Well, that's your electric too. Like it can't just be the data equipment, like for a data center, for example. The electric and the cooling also has to match that same uptime or something very, very close to it. So
it's a lot of big risk. That's
big risk.
Now,
so
medium or small risk.
Well, huge.
Yeah. Big upside.
So like it makes tons and it's not, like I said, it's not just in Zimbabwe and Nigeria. It's also in places like Texas, right? So Texas very famously had some massive grid failures. A few years ago in the wintertime, like, they were getting some unexpected cold snaps.
Couple winters in a row, right?
Two in a row that killed
it was
many people. And the root cause of this is like the way that Texas manages its grid, which is a whole episode on its own if we want it to be. It's a bit insane. When it works great, but when it doesn't work, it kills hundreds of people. So, you decide what the trade-off is worth. But anyway, the point is that you can't necessarily rely on Texas infrastructure. They're getting more hurricanes that are bigger all the time. Most of the people I know who still have family in Texas, people who've like retired there. Their retired moms and dads are buying generators and transfer switches and things. There's like a whole cottage industry around getting those things installed into like retrofitting homes from the 1950s to 70s with these, fairly robust power transfer setups that often include backup batteries and even, don't say it out loud when you're in Texas, but even some solar,
It's true.
So.
And the infrastructure is getting older. Like there is a lot of older infrastructure that has to be maintained, has to be updated. Like how are they planning for, or how would, let's say you're back in Texas, back home, and you're working with like some of the companies that you worked for, but in transmission, in energy generation, how are they planning for these? How would you plan for some of the updates and the maintenance that needs to happen in order to work around
the main thing,
some of these tragedies?
And that's really what it boils down to is like if the big one comes, what do you do? Like, are you going to be ready? Yep. And the answer for most places that exist today is no, not really. No, we're not ready. So what do we need to do is a really good question, and mostly it's about scenario planning and doing some scenario-based risk analysis, like using bow tie studies, for example, to figure out like hurricane, right? Big fat hurricane hits your refinery. A lot of refineries are right on the coast because there's like marine terminals there for shipping things out. So, the storm surge that happens during a hurricane can be pretty gnarly, and that's actually the thing that causes the most damage on like a seaside refinery, because you just get the seawater comes in, it just floods everything, right? So you need to start thinking about what does your mitigation look like, because it used to be that 1,000-year storm would happen every 1,000 years. Now it seems to happen every 10 years or so, which means that you've got to be prepared to mitigate for circumstances that were borderline inconceivable just a few years ago.
Yeah. We talked about climate risk on another episode from last year, which was, I find it really interesting to explore, but we did. Go check out that if you.
It is, and I'm basically talking about the same for sure. That one was a lot about adaptation, right? Like we spent a lot of time talking about climate adaptation. I think that's the thing, right? Like that's what I'm talking about. Like that's what a lot of money's being spent on. But anyway, we're getting a little bit off track.
Well, I know it's an interesting. I like to get off track, but let's go back to the prediction. So we were talking about mining competing with AI for energy was the next one, right? So we're on this mining thread, but now we're kind of like it's competing for AI for energy, right? And there's like Google, Amazon, like they're all signing contracts to build SMRs. But what is that?
Which was another prediction we made, by the way. There'd be more of those, and there have been. But we're talking about I mentioned Texas earlier. Requests for like future grid demand quadrupled in 2025, and 73% of that growth was from AI data centers. Right.
Yep.
So Texas is, as we discussed on that episode, a very comfortable regulatory environment for places looking to build a data center, and that's great. Like Alberta is another example of those. But it is going to place a lot of stress on grids, which means that grids are going to become heavily privatized. We have lots of private investment going into grid robustness and grid capacity, and that's one of the, we were talking about China earlier and the sheer quantity of capacity that they're adding to their grid. None of that's coming from private sources. Well, I shouldn't say that declaratively, but like the Chinese government, oversees the construction of all this stuff. So they have a bit of an advantage when it comes to building big things quickly. And in the U.S., if you want to do that, you're going to have to get some private money involved, and that's exactly what's happening.
And I think the planners, the PMOs, like our audience, the executive sponsors for these mega projects are thinking about different ways of structuring like financing and power, and right? I mean, would they be thinking about a different way of just putting the whole project together and putting it into execution? Well,
they would have to, especially if your project is going to be a power hog. I mean, generally speaking, for most construction projects, the workflow is still the same. You have to go to the grid or go to the utility, ask them how much capacity they're going to have in that specific area where you're looking to build. They're going to have to build something new to accommodate your medium to large builds, like a switchgear or something. But there could be a lot more to it than that. There could be, depending on where you are and how big your thing is, like, one of the projects that we're working on right now is in Edmonton, Alberta. Edmonton is a medium-sized city. If you were to plop a hyperscaler into the middle of downtown Edmonton, there isn't grid capacity to support something like that. So it would have to come with some additional investment in, generation capacity. And the problem with a lot of these projects is they're planned on a much shorter horizon than grid capacity in general is. So, one of the things we talked about last year wasn't really a prediction, but there was like a run on gas turbines, like natural gas driven turbines.
Right.
Like the pricing and the lead time for those went through the roof because everybody was trying to shore up short-term electricity demand driven by data centers. The best way to do that for economically speaking is actually solar, but solar makes poor baseload because of the whole sun is off, no power problem.
Sun is off.
The sun is off. Yeah, somebody's reached up, pulled a little cord, and the sun switched off.
It makes me think of like a Looney Tunes cartoon, or
it's very
Ren and Stimpy or something.
That's where
like
I'm
that.
at. Yeah, that's where I'm at today mentally.
Yeah, that's
but Matt, the sun has a big
place.
cord you could pull.
You're not at a Beavis and Butthead sort of place, and that's good.
Yet
we're all good.
Yeah, fortunately we're recording this in the morning.
All right, so the next prediction, similar, but kind of moving along towards the AI space. But we talked about autonomous technology risks, and this is I find it's really funny. It's a funny risk.
I mean, it is.
You know what? If I was involved, it's not funny.
I'm reading ahead in our research here, and the very next thing is like multiple documented collisions between autonomous. And Nate's like, "This is pretty funny." Way to go, Nate! Way to go.
Yeah, I just proved that Nate's are an asshole, and we are lying about Nate.Dave. I guess.
Yeah, obviously,
there, right? Like we're
so.
The prediction? Let's talk about the prediction.
Sure.
Let's read it because it's funny. The way that it's phrased. All of these technologies are inherently risky because they're new.
Yeah.
I think you probably said that, not me.
Probably. I mean, there's definitely a two-sided coin situation here with autonomous vehicles, right? Like, yeah, they are inherently risky. I was just having this conversation with a lawyer friend of mine. The real risk of autonomous vehicles in terms of their broad adoption in public, right? Like on public roads, moving the public around, like Waymo taxis in San Francisco are a good example of this. The real risk there isn't that they're going to be less safe than human drivers. They're not. They're much more safe than human drivers.
Actually,
the real risk,
they are.
Totally, they are. Yep. And by the way, the multiple documented collisions we have here, I haven't read deeply into this research, but I'd be willing to bet basically anything that those were caused by the human drivers. Okay, I would be willing to bet basically.
I'm not going to take that bet.
No, I wouldn't if I.
But I'll bet you $1. Maybe you know what? Maybe we'll do an episode where we just bet each other money on stuff.
Yeah,
that would be funny.
Right. Quarter bets. The episode,
quarter bets.
Just exchanging quarters.
Did I tell you that I taught my daughter how to play Texas Hold'em, and we were playing for I'm going to play her for money?
Nice.
We're just playing tokens. I know a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah, it's important.
Well, it's important to teach them
understand risk.
Yeah,
to bet.
Well, I was going to say one of the alternative career paths that is very attainable these days is to go play poker for money. But anyway, back to autonomous haul trucks. That same strip mining client I was talking about, I mentioned on the episode where I first dropped their name. It's Imperial, by the way. No big secrets there. So like Imperial Oil is here in Calgary, and
shout out to Imperial.
Yep. Yeah, what's up, guys? How you go?
Imperial, ExxonMobil. Yep.
Yeah. Not exactly one and the same, but kind of one and the same. Yeah. But anyway, so they have a strip mining operation that they would really love if you didn't call a strip mining operation up in the oil sands that use a lot of mining technologies, including autonomous haul trucks. And I was part of a very, very small part of the project to get their first autonomous haul trucks in and tested.
Yeah.
And they were running a pilot program for a couple of years there, where they had drivers in the trucks in case the autonomous pilots did something stupid. And now, as in like I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, all of the haul trucks are autonomous, and their incident rate has gone basically down to zero.
Shut up. Really?
Yes. So they don't hit stuff. They're not backing into pipe racks. They're not backing into loaders. They're not.
That's
hitting
because
each
it's
other.
just a wide open space and there's no humans. That's why. To your point earlier.
And yet somehow the human haul drivers were managing to hit stuff anyway. Okay. So like the incident rate doesn't come down to zero from zero.
If you hit anything with a haul truck, like you're going to be okay.
Unless it's another haul truck.
Right.
The other thing is probably dead now. But you know, the point is that, yeah, it is a pretty bad scene when a haul truck rams into something. So the fact that their incident rate is down basically to zero implies that the autonomous part of this equation is not where the issue is. And that kind of brings me back to what I was saying earlier. It's largely a legal concern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one wonders who is responsible when an autonomous vehicle is involved in a wreck. Like, what if two autonomous vehicles have a wreck with each other? They were both making the best decision available.
They can have their
time.
AI lawyers sue, and you know,
exactly.
their AI
ChatGPT will write the briefs.
Yeah.
You know, the judge will review. Yeah, I mean, it does raise some interesting questions. And there are damages, right? Like
that's right.
There can be, you know, injuries and property
AI
damage.
Judge Judy.
And you know,
it's gonna be.
Sure, like there's an autonomous Toyota Prius in one side of the courtroom and a person in a neck collar on the other side. But you know, the reason why Imperial was able to achieve zero or near zero incident rate with their autonomous haul vehicles is because they're operating more or less in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Like they're fully separated from the public roads. They're fully separated from, at this point now, human haul truck drivers. Even like human systems operators are largely out of the equation. Like the things that are being, you know, operated kind of in parallel with the haul trucks are largely remote operated now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot less risk just inherent in that system than there was even 10 years ago. So that's, I think, you know, the upside. The downside is that there will be collisions and things, and you kind of have to start building a framework for how to deal with that stuff, like right now, you know, and we don't have one. You know, you mentioned something to me earlier that I thought was interesting, that the Waymo meltdown in San Francisco.
San Francisco, yep, last December.
And that was because of a power outage, I believe, right?
Yep.
So
and
all
it blocked, it blocked trams and whatnot, like the trams in San Francisco, and it was messy.
There were Waymo taxis piled up at intersections and stuff, just like waiting for instructions of what they should be doing. And you know, I don't know the specifics of that situation, but like it definitely made the news, right?
Let's move on, Albert. Let's because we got some other like pretty interesting stuff to go over. Next, and just to kind of continue on I think the AI thread. Right?
Yeah, it's fertile ground.
Just look here. There's so much. We talked about AI adoption and AI, sort of the AI reality. Like we are seeing a lot more adoption.
Yep.
But it's, you know, you could argue, is it better? Is it worse? Like it depends on who you like. Do you like ads in ChatGPT or not? Yeah, let's read it. So that we see what you sounded like on.
The prediction I made was that 2026 would be the year when we actually started using AI, and that it would get, quote, more expensive and worse. This following the trend of new technologies, you know, especially new like high technology computer stuff that comes out. It always seems to start as this unbelievable unlock, this massive value add, and then the price tag shows up, you know, 2 years later, and it's way higher than you'd expect, and suddenly the service is worse. So that's what I was predicting. I still think that's going to happen, and we have seen like there's a lot of uptake. Like people are using it more. Like the fact that 2026 is the year when everybody starts using AI, definitely 100%. You could argue we overshot that. Like
ChatGPT is introducing ads, right? Like the people, AI is they're looking for ways to pay for themselves. Essentially, Claude is killing it on the enterprise front.
Yep, they went
right?
B2B, like and that's going to be their big differentiator. I think.
I was reading an article about the developer that created OpenClaw or whatever, Moltbot or whatever it's called now. You know, he ended up going to work for OpenAI, but Anthropic actually sent him a cease and desist, which I thought was a really good move, because if you're in the enterprise space, you want to be trusted and you want to be consistent, and so that was a good move. Yeah,
the knives are coming out in the AI market for sure, especially when you got Jensen Huang and Sam Altman from NVIDIA and OpenAI respectively now sparring with each other, out in public, talking about this investment promise that they made, this circular investment, which was total nonsense in the first instance. But even so, now that it's starting to fall apart in public, everybody's pointing fingers, and these two are pointing them squarely at each other. So I think that this is going to be, I listen to Pivot, I know you do too. Scott Galloway compares OpenAI to Netscape, right? Like the first really excellent browser, also the one that no one uses anymore. I really expect that that's a good comparison, that we're going to see OpenAI start to sunset in favor of some of the other, I haven't touched ChatGPT in probably 6 months. Like I've been using Gemini and
I don't even
Claude.
have it on my phone anymore.
No, indeed. The three I use in order are Claude, Gemini, and Perplexity, in that order.
I use Gemini, Claude, and I've started to use Kimi, which is the Chinese app. I'm maybe this is like xenophobic of me, but I just don't trust the Chinese ones. I mean, I just don't. Like I remember when DeepSeek. I don't put personal information into Claude. I don't. I think Kimi is less trusted, but their capability, their context window is massive, and they are a tenth of the price. And for
that
deep
would be
research. They are. Kim is killing it. They really are.
I'm gonna have to look into this.
They actually launched so not only does Kimi do Claude code type, work, on your command line interface, they also they took OpenClaw and they wrapped it. So it's now like sandboxed in the Kimi app. So you don't have to set up your sandbox. Remember all of the security concerns with OpenClaw, and it was just an agent that was running wild. It would take over your whole computer,
right,
and sending emails in your back. Well, Kimi actually sandboxed itself in their app, and
that's sensible.
It's cool. Like it's for research. It's cool.
Claude Code feels sandboxed that way, but every now and then when it's running in the background, I'll be doing something, and then a little banner will appear and say, Claude Code is debugging this browser window. It's like, well, I didn't ask it to do that, but okay.
The Claude co-work is really cool, though. If you haven't
tried that yet,
try it out. It's cool. It's essentially like that Open Claw. It's just a little bit more trustworthy, and it's good. It's cool.
Okay. Cool.
Anyways, we digress, but let's continue.
Not really though, because we're talking about this adoption stuff, and we pulled some research that shows that only about 12% of the organizations that could be using AI for project management are, and of that same population, about 29% feel unprepared to do so. And that's a bit of a paradox, because on the flip side of that coin is in the technology world, like in coding and in high tech development and stuff, like there's already widespread job displacement.
That's right.
37% of U.S. companies expect AI to replace a significant portion of their workforce by late this year. And that, by the way, is another prediction that we made last year on the same episode. We were talking about massive job displacement, and that wasn't just us, it was everybody, right? We all saw this coming.
Yeah.
I mean, the companies that make the AI models are the first in line to talk about how they will replace jobs, right, and replace knowledge workers and things like that. But like it's a huge impact. I mean, I don't remember, was it Canva? I think the Canva CEO came out and said that their coders are now just reviewing AI code. Like they don't have people writing code so much anymore. Like they've got a smaller workforce that's just reviewing AI written code. Amazon shed 14,000 jobs in October. IBM pulled several hundred of their HR workers and replaced them with chatbots. Ignite Tech, this guy, I can't remember the CEO's name, but he made some news for himself by replacing 80% of his staff with, they weren't really replaced with AI like LLMs or what have you. It was more like these were the people that were not on board with the changeover, right?
I think there's a lot of, if your job is a task, then you should be concerned. If your job is a task, like that, that's like right for AI. Mm-hmm. If your job involves thinking, and that's you're better off. But yeah, if your job is a task, you should be afraid, and we're starting to see a lot of that. A lot of those.
A big chunk of my early career was spent doing exactly this, like building tools that automated repetitive processes, simple stuff like in Visual Basic Excel programming, like really, really simple automation stuff that anybody could do. And in fact, no one has to anymore because you can just get friggin' ChatGPT or Claude to do it for you. But, I got a lot of pushback early on, and it always confused me until I realized that I was putting people's livelihoods at risk by making huge chunks of their job just disappear, right?
Right.
Like if you have two admins who are doing the job of one person with an automatic tool, then guess what? One of them gets fired, right?
Yeah.
And usually the one who is the most afraid of getting fired is the one who, pushes back the hardest on what they're, and that probably explains the situation at Ignite Tech. I mean, there are definitely people who are racing to the bottom, right, in terms of quality, and don't mind that the AIs maybe aren't doing as good a job as the people would in those same roles, but you know what? They're a hell of a lot cheaper, so maybe that's enough.
I think AI slop will be one of the words of the year, and that annual kind of ritual.
Oxford. Yeah.
Yes, the word of the year, slop.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean,
there's a lot of it. I mean, even now you look at, I don't know, Pinterest. You look at,
it's all AI
Instagram.
Stuff.
You look at, even on TikTok, like it's all AI. Even on YouTube, right? Like it's wild.
This is actually a nice clean segue to the next prediction / topic. We kind of touched on this earlier when we were talking
Which
about
one
mining.
is that, Albert?
Well, I'll tell you, Nate. So we talked about AI needing to build or reactivate nuclear power stations in order to keep up with energy demand. And like I said, we touched on this a little bit when we were talking about mining, but it's a particularly acute problem in AI because as these AI models grow in capability, they also grow in infrastructure demand. They need a lot of water, a ton of water. They need a lot of power. It's wild how much resources how many resources they already consume. And
it's all just playing catch up right now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you have there were several deals that were signed last year between big tech and nuclear, in order to kind of grease the wheels a little bit to smooth that transition. There's more now, right? Like there's already been more announced. So some in January. One signed by Meta, that's the big one, 6 gigawatts of a dedicated power being diverted from existing plants and future SMRs. And these are all, there's a mix of old and new nuclear technologies in there. Google signed, I think it was just an MOA for offtake from fusion companies. So those fusion power doesn't really exist yet, but all these companies are looking towards the 2030s for when it will.
And beyond, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and this is sorry, go ahead.
It's a race to catch up. At this point, I got to imagine that the project managers at some of these tech companies that are trying to figure out, the roadmap for, new products and services. Now it's just when am I going to get the power?
Yeah.
To run this, right? That's the biggest dependency.
It is. And we quoted some stats around the growth of data center power demand being something like 20 to 30% compounding annually. And it's turned out like the 25 to 26 growth was a little lower than that. It was around 14%. And that's the new projection out through 2030, which is, a good thing. But that's still 100 gigawatts of new capacity. That's $3 trillion in investment required by 2030. $3 trillion. Now that's a lot lower number than it used to be, right? But because that's like the market cap of name a tech company, which is insane that there's multiple that are over $1 trillion, but there are.
Yeah. I feel it's like only yesterday that who broke the trillion? Was it Microsoft first?
I don't
You know
think
what
it
I'm talking
was.
about? This is
I think
like
I think it was
ago.
Nvidia. I think it was Nvidia that broke
maybe.
$1 trillion
Yeah.
first. We can get pretty easily fact checked on that one, but the point
Yeah.
is that there's now multiple that are over $1 trillion.
Well, there is a listener survey. If you want to fact check us, you can go to our show notes.
That's right.
And you can fill out that listener survey.
Please go tell us
right
how
away.
wrong we. Please abuse us. Tell
Nate,
us that we
not
did a
Dave.
bad job over at Nate, not Dave.
But you're right. 14%, 100 gigawatts of new capacity, $3 trillion. How are we, like, what's going through the mind of an executive at a power company? Are they excited by this? Is this
I have to.
daunting?
Well, on the
Right?
one
Like,
hand, on the
What are
one
they
hand,
thinking?
they're certainly going. They're making a lot of phone calls. They're showing up at a lot of private islands to talk about how amazing their upcoming power technology is
Not
going
those
to be.
private islands.
Yeah, different private islands. The kind where you play golf and do business, not the kind where anything else might happen. But the idea here is that you're going to have to. A lot of these deals are being made. They're not being made, through an RFP process. They're being made because people know each other, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of glad handing going on right now, I would bet. The other thing that's, on the one hand, it's dollar signs, right? Like it's big money to get involved with one of these, trade deals theoretically, right? Because all this capacity has yet to be built, which brings me to the second thing. Like that's a lot of projects, right? A lot of projects that suddenly just need to appear out of thin air and get built in the next 5 to 6 years. Like that's a lot. We don't do great at capacity enhancements on the North American continent. Like we're not amazing at it. One of the things that we mentioned in our nuclear episode, one of several nuclear episodes last year, was that capacity enhancements and life cycle extensions were a more viable path to a long-term nuclear future than new builds were, at least as of that moment. And that there continued to be tens of billions of dollars invested in Canada alone in renewing old nuclear power stations to make them good for the next 30 to 50 years.
So the executives are happy, right? Because they're glad handing, they're shaking hands, they're going golfing. But it's the, wake up in the middle of the night with a cold sweat stress that's happening at the program.
At the project executive level.
Yeah,
like
right.
Because those people are the ones who actually have to deliver on those promises, right? Like CEO gets to play golf, have a nice meal, and, sign a deal that has a $400 million, bottom line. And that's all wonderful. But the program managers and project executives that are responsible for delivering that now have, a massive peak of effort to climb,
Right.
like it's going to be, it's already hard enough, right? Like I've worked on enough of these refurbs on enough new builds to know that like it's pretty hard under normal circumstances when you aren't up against the clock. And we are very much against the clock right now.
You know what? This is an interesting one. But I'm going to read this prediction because I bet this was what I said. We're going to have to, as a species, run an enormous amount of new fiber optic cable in the next 10 years to keep up with all this demand for bandwidth. Actually, that was a you. That was not me, because I would not have called the human race species.
Yeah, there are two as a species quotes in this document.
Yeah. It's true. But this is an interesting one. So fiber optics, right? Like who, of course, like you're going to need to move data faster. And like just last week, I think I read an article about Corning stock is just through the roof because they're racing to meet demand for new fiber optic cable.
So I heard another story along these lines that I thought you might find interesting.
Pray tell.
Well, so Toto, right? Like
Toto.
the toilet seat
Toto?
company. Toto.
Yeah, of course.
Not-
I did a reno and I put Totos in my house.
Yeah. Oh, of course you did, because they're the best, right? Like I've got a Toto washlet sitting, not 10 feet from me, right there. I'm pointing at the fancy Japanese toilet seat. So Toto has some pretty significant ceramics manufacturing capability, as you might guess, and they supply the brackets that like memory chips and like integrated silicon are made in, right? And super high test ceramics are important for a process called cryogenic etching, which is when they use like ultra cold temperatures to like build layers like at the molecular level into memory chips, which is how we're doing it now. Which is crazy. So like Toto has had like massive growth in their stock price as a result of, getting part of, because like memory cost is crazy right now. Like like a buddy of mine surfaced a screenshot to me showing that like buying 64 gigabytes of RAM is more expensive right now than buying an AR-15, right? So that does not seem like it's well calibrated, frankly, but like that means that there's a lot of market cap in making memory right now.
I want, lots of gigabytes of RAM, but I don't. Yeah, that's a really interesting.
But do you want it more than an assault rifle?
You and I, having born and raised Americans, and we've talked about this before, Americans have this thing where we will measure anything other than like an appropriate measure, right? It's like, oh, it's 3 football fields, or like, oh, it's just as expensive or more expensive than an AR-15. Like we will, right? We always will measure it.
But I still think it's
like 65 tankers long. I don't know, or something.
How many tractor trailer trucks?
4.35 Eiffel Towers tall. Yeah.
Well,
so this is interesting because we're talking about fiber optics and ceramics that are holding like
the point I was trying to make is that like this issue of like needing more ceramic capacity to do more computer stuff, like it's causing toilet manufacturers to have a banner year. That's where I'm going with this. Like that's kind of nuts.
Okay.
So anyway,
let's move on. So one of my favorite episodes from last year, and some of the predictions, like you went to the AACE in San Diego, right?
Yep.
And you recorded interviews on the floor.
Going again this year, going to do the same thing.
Yeah, but not in San Diego.
No, in Las
and you're
Vegas.
Actually going to be presenting at AACEs.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. Because we just submitted. So me and my co-authors, whom I will name drop. So it's myself, Roger Bradfield, also from Docanish, and Rachel Fleming from MBP Consulting. We co-authored a paper on program risk management, which mark your calendars. It'll be presented at the Vegas show this year, unless it isn't, right? It still has to clear peer review and go through an editing round and stuff like that. We submitted it about 3 weeks ago. So we're waiting to hear back on the first round of edits, but we were not the first. So everybody asked for extensions, right? Because the paper submission deadline just like bookended Christmas. Like they accepted the submissions on, in like September, October, and then they were accepting them at the end of January. And it's like, what do you guys think is happening between October and January? Just like brainstorm a few things. It's a lot.
Not much. No, not much. Other
than Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and that's just to name drop the Judeo-Christian ones I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other stuff going on. But anyway, the point is, it was a busy time and lots of people didn't submit on time. So I'm not expecting to get comments back for another week or two at minimum.
Fair. But the comments that you got when you well, hold on. Let's go back to the actual conversations you had on the floor, because those were really interesting. So one, we did an episode where we talked about those, and then we did another episode. You just went through and played the recordings, which was really cool. So you can go check those out on our podcast.
And we will do that again. But like the main standout concept there, we talked about California high-speed rail locks. We're in California, so why not? High-speed rail, one of the things I mentioned on that episode is that any rail project of that magnitude is going to be a mega project. Like it just is. Like there's too much money required to do large infrastructure development for it not to be a mega project. And 9 of 10 mega projects go over on cost. So we talked a lot about that at the show, and people had some interesting takes on the high-speed rail project specifically. But it must be said that a pretty big chunk of the segment that was approved, like the little tiny 120 mile segment in rural-esque California, a big chunk of it's already been
built. That's right.
Built, yeah. There's no track there yet, but like they've built a bunch of it. There's right here in Calgary, the Green Line, which has been a perennial failure, like something that just keeps not happening. Like that's starting to get built too. So maybe we need to put our flag down and say that 2026 is the year of trains.
Well, here in Toronto, the Eglinton Crosstown is a tram, and it opened finally, $1 billion over budget.
Yeah. That one was a feature of a previous episode from this year, I think.
It was, but it's great, and it's nice to have more transit. I mean, if you're going to be a world-class city, you need to have the transit. But when you were at AACE, you were talking about the high-speed rail, and what did people say? What did people have to tell?
Well, I would say it was a pretty solid majority that were not optimistic about it being built. I mean,
go figure.
Yeah, I mean, taking history as a guide, obviously things have not gone great for that project. But if you just like cast a wider net, like rail in North America is just fraught with issues, like absolutely fraught. Like when the car took over, the American consciousness in the 1940s and 50s, like investment in commuter rail just like stopped, right?
Yeah.
I mean, except in some of the places that already had it, right? Like, New York has a famously both good and bad train network, right? Which is getting a lot better as I understand it. But the reason why New York City has such an extensive commuter rail network is because it has had one for over 100 years.
Yeah.
Right. Like the first commuter rail in New York was a pneumatic rail system from like the 19th century, So, and some of those tunnels I think are still used for the subways. I might be wrong about that, but the point is that if you didn't get there early, you don't get there at all. So having, this massive investment in building new rail is like, it's promising, but once again, the people doing it best are the Chinese, and it's not like we're inviting a bunch of Chinese contractors to come here and build our rail for us. Like I wish,
we're not.
Wish we did, but we're not.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if they were invited.
Yeah, I think as of August 2025, 59% of that segment that you referred to is complete now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's progressing, which is good for that rural area of California that's connected now.
Yeah, I mean, we're only dealing with 35% cost overruns on that section. So I guess compared to some of the other ones we've got, like the channel tunnels at 80%, if you include financing, it's at 140%. The Big Dig was 220% over. The Opera House, we talked about that on our last episode.
Yep.
But like all these like major infrastructure projects that Opera House isn't really infrastructure, but the point is that they all tend to run massively over. So 35% on this segment is pretty good. But I do wonder where that is measuring from. It's certainly not measuring from the initial high-speed rail estimates from 10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, like those numbers have. The planning eclipsed the full construction cost of those numbers years ago. So there's no chance we're talking about 35% versus that. Must be against a recent baseline.
What's your one piece of advice for that project executive as they look to some of the new technologies in 2026 and how it might enhance some of their project delivery?
Well, I'm going to touch base to the one that I always fall back on, which is AI. I mean, we dropped a stat earlier that less than 30% of companies feel confident that they have a path forward for AI. Meanwhile, there's, tens of thousands of jobs being shed each year, and that trend will likely continue as AI uptake increases. So that's an odd convergence of we're already letting tens of thousands of people go, and we don't know what to do with their replacement tools, right? Like, it's time to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
We talked about AI-enabled tooling and some of because AI tends to be a conversation about large language models, and that's not the only AI technology that's maturing fast right now. Like machine learning more generally, from a pattern recognition and data analysis perspective, like those tools are getting democratized too. Mm-hmm. But LLMs are sucking all the air out of the room. So that conversation hasn't really matured yet, and it's time for it to. I think it's time to start thinking about pattern recognition, machine learning as your next big unlock for taking your historical data and turning it into a planning tool. Like right now, a lot of companies, including some of our clients, have whole departments of estimators and project managers who are just wrangling historical data. Well, as soon as that data gets wrangled, it's going to get fed to an AI as a training model. And we're going to start seeing AI planned projects, I think, this year, where AIs have crawled historical data and pulled together like schedule estimates and budgets, sure at a high level, but enough for a screening that'll probably be a heck of a lot more accurate. And oddly, we talked about strategic misrepresentation and the cognitive bias against the big number on a recent episode. I think that if executives are seeing the number come out of a computer system, that is theoretically, well, not theoretically, it isn't a person, right? Like you can't hate it. It's just numbers. And I think executives are going to be more likely to trust that than they will be to trust the many, many schedulers and estimators who've been telling them for years that their numbers are too small, right? You might actually see executives start to take that seriously as soon as an AI says it instead of, say, me, for example.
So interesting. Thanks, Albert.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. This was a fun one. I enjoy reading my own predictions.
I think, the transcriptions will get some funnier. Because I think most of them were yours, not mine. Mine, again, would have been all over the map. But yeah, thanks, man.
We should start keeping track of your predictions, though. Yeah, the next one will be even more fun.
I'm going to talk to 40 more Nates, and we're all going to confirm that we all get called Dave. Anyways, thanks a lot, Albert.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, talk to y'all later. Bye.
Hey everybody, it's Albert here. Thanks for tuning in to the Risky Planner podcast. We hope today's conversation was informative and above all else inspires you to excellence in what you do. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners just like you. I'd also like to thank Thompson Igbo for letting us use his excellent music on our show. If you like what you hear, check him out at igbomusic.com. That's EGBO music.com. Talk at you later.